The last remaining human battleship, Defiance, emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Centauri system, its hull bearing the scars of countless battles. Captain Ju-won Park stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the tactical display as she mentally counted their dwindling resources. "Status report," she commanded, her voice steady despite the weight of responsibility. Lieutenant Kim answered without looking up from his console. "All systems operational, Captain. Minimal power fluctuations in the quantum array. We've got 150 souls aboard, all that remains of Earth's defense force." The Defiance represented humanity's final stand. The galactic hegemony had methodically destroyed human colonies across 3 sectors, leaving Earth itself a radioactive husk. Intelligence suggested the 7-species coalition feared human adaptability and potential, choosing extermination over coexistence. "Incoming transmission," announced Communications Officer Lee. Hegemony signature. The alien face that appeared on screen had the typical hegemony diplomat's features: smooth gray skin and 4 gleaming eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. "Human vessel, you are ordered to power down and prepare for boarding. Resistance is." Captain Park cut the transmission with a gesture. "Tactical, deploy countermeasures. Navigation, bring us about to heading 227 Mark IV. Let's show them what one human battleship can do." The Defiance surged forward, weapon systems coming online as they accelerated toward the unsuspecting hegemony scouts. Captain Park watched the enemy vessels grow larger on the view screen. 3 scout ships, lightly armed but fast. The scouts began to scatter, realizing too late that the lone human ship wasn't surrendering. "Target the lead vessel," Park ordered. "Low power, directed burst." Weapons Officer Ta nodded. "Targeting systems locked. Firing in 3, 2, 1. A blue beam lanced out from the Defiance, striking the scout ship's engine section. The alien vessel spun wildly, its propulsion systems failing. "Second target coming about, Captain," Lieutenant Kim reported. "They're charging weapons." Park smiled thinly. "Let them. Activate shield harmonics." When the enemy fired, their energy weapons splashed harmlessly against the Defiance's shields. The human crew had learned from each previous encounter, adapting their defenses to counter hegemony weapons. "They're calling for reinforcements," Officer Lee said, monitoring communications. "Good," Park replied. "That's exactly what we want." The plan had always been to draw attention. The Defiance was bait, and the hegemony was taking it. "All hands, battle stations," Park announced over the ship-wide comm. "This is what we trained for." Throughout the massive battleship, crew members moved with purpose. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Jun checked the quantum drive's power output. In the medical bay, Dr. Shin prepared for casualties. In the hangar, the few remaining fighter pilots climbed into their craft. The Defiance was not just any battleship. It was humanity's masterpiece, incorporating technologies that had been theoretical just years ago. The pressure of extinction had accelerated human innovation beyond all expectations. "Captain, 6 hegemony cruisers entering the system," Kim reported, his voice tense but controlled. Park nodded. "Right on schedule. How long until they're in range?" 4 minutes at current speed." Park turned to Tactical Officer Ta. "Prepare the main array. Full power this time." The quantum array was the ship's secret weapon. Developed in the final days before Earth fell, it had never been deployed at full capacity. The technology manipulated quantum fields in ways that shouldn't be possible, creating weapons that ignored conventional physics. "Array charging," Ta confirmed. "Power levels at 60% and rising." The bridge crew worked silently, each focused on their task. They were the last of humanity, carrying the knowledge, culture, and hopes of an entire species. Failure meant extinction. "Hegemony ships entering weapons range," Kim announced. "They're forming an attack pattern." The alien vessels moved with practiced precision, spreading out to surround the Defiance. Their tactic was sound against conventional opponents, but the human ship was anything but conventional. Now they'll try to negotiate again, Park predicted. They always do before the final attack. As if on cue, Officer Lee reported, "Incoming transmission, Captain." The same four-eyed alien appeared on screen. "Human vessel, your situation is hopeless. Surrender now and your crew will be treated according to galactic conventions." Park knew this was a lie. The hegemony had shown no mercy to humans. Captured soldiers were dissected to study human biology. Civilian prisoners became test subjects for weapons. "Quantum array at full charge," Tay reported quietly. Park stared directly at the alien diplomat. "Our answer is no." She cut the transmission and turned to her crew. "Target the command ship. Full power discharge." Tay's fingers moved across his console. Target locked. Firing. Now. Unlike conventional weapons, the quantum array produced no visible beam. There was only a slight ripple in space between the Defiance and the target. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, the hegemony command ship simply unraveled. Its matter separated at the quantum level, the ship dissolving into its component particles. In seconds, the massive cruiser was gone, leaving no debris. The bridge fell silent. Even the crew, who knew what to expect, were awed by the weapon's power. "By the stars," whispered Lieutenant Kim. The remaining hegemony ships froze, their coordinated attack forgotten. Nothing in their experience had prepared them for what they'd just witnessed. "Send a message to all hegemony vessels," Park ordered. "Tell them this is just the beginning." Officer Lee swallowed hard. "Message sent, Captain. Now target their engine systems. Low power. We don't want to destroy them all. We need survivors to spread the word." The Defiance fired again, disabling 2 more cruisers with precision strikes. The remaining ships began to retreat, their formations breaking down into chaos. "They're running," Kim said, disbelief in his voice. Park nodded. As expected, fear is a powerful motivator. She stood from her command chair and addressed the bridge crew. "This is only our first step. The hegemony will soon know that humanity isn't defeated. We're coming for them. For what they did to Earth, to our colonies." Officer Lee looked up from his console, a rare smile on his face. "Captain, I'm picking up transmissions between the retreating ships. They're calling us. They're calling the Defiance, the destroyer of worlds." "Good," Park said. "Let them fear us. It's their turn now." The Defiance moved deeper into the system, its quantum drives humming with power. One ship against an empire. The odds were impossible, but humanity had always thrived on beating the impossible. One human battleship. The beginning of the end for the galactic hegemony. The Defiance drifted silently through space, its massive engines powered down to minimum levels. 3 days had passed since their first victory against the hegemony scouts. Captain Park stood at the center of the bridge, watching as her crew worked with quiet efficiency. "Quantum cascade array fully charged," reported Weapons Officer Han, his fingers dancing across the console with practiced precision. Captain Park nodded. "Target the lead cruiser. Minimal yield. We don't need to reveal our full capabilities yet." The weapon that powered the Defiance represented the pinnacle of human ingenuity, developed in secret by Earth's brightest minds during the final days. The quantum cascade array didn't merely damage enemy vessels. It created localized ruptures in space-time that bypassed conventional shields entirely. When the weapon fired, there was no dramatic beam or explosion, just a brief distortion of light followed by the enemy cruiser splitting cleanly in 2, its systems failing instantly. The remaining hegemony vessels attempted to coordinate a response, but their tactics were predictable. Within minutes, the entire scout squadron had been neutralized. "Captain, we've accessed their navigational database," reported Science Officer Song. "I've located the coordinates for the hegemony Central Command." Park's expression remained neutral, but her eyes betrayed a glimmer of hope. "Can we get there?" "Yes," Song replied, "but we'd be flying directly into the heart of enemy territory." The bridge fell silent as all eyes turned to their captain. "Plot the course," Park ordered. It's time to end this war. Lieutenant Kim entered the coordinates while Officer Han monitored the disabled hegemony vessels drifting nearby. The enemy crews were still alive, their distress signals broadcasting across multiple frequencies. Should we finish them? Han asked quietly. Captain Park shook her head. No. Let them live to tell others what they saw. Fear can be a powerful weapon. Chief Engineer Jun arrived on the bridge, his uniform stained with coolant fluid. Captain, I've completed my analysis of the array's performance during the engagement. And? Park asked. It exceeded all expectations, Jun said, unable to hide his excitement. Power consumption was 22% lower than projected. The targeting system maintained 99.8% accuracy. But most importantly, I've discovered how to modify the yield without increasing power requirements. Park raised an eyebrow. How much of an increase? Potentially triple the current output, Jun replied. Though I wouldn't recommend testing that in anything but the most desperate circumstances. The bridge crew exchanged glances. The array had already demonstrated power beyond anything the hegemony possessed. Tripling that output seemed almost excessive. Make the modifications, Park ordered. But keep this information classified. Level 1 clearance only. As Jun returned to engineering, Science Officer Song approached the captain's chair with a data tablet. There's something else you should see. This was in the hegemony database. Park examined the screen, her expression hardening. The file contained information about Earth's destruction, specifically that it had been a test case for a new hegemony superweapon called the Planet Killer. They're planning to use this on all remaining human outposts, Song said quietly. Even the small colonies we thought they didn't know about. Park's hands tightened on the tablet. Did they deploy this weapon already? According to this data, no. It's still at their central command station. They're refining the targeting systems before deploying it to their fleet. For the first time since taking command of the Defiance, Captain Park felt a surge of pure rage. She handed the tablet back to Song and walked to the ship's view screen, staring at the stars. How many colonies do we have left? She asked without turning. 17 confirmed, replied Lieutenant Kim. All small, all hidden. Total population under 50,000 humans. Park took a deep breath, steadying herself. Then our mission is even more critical. We need to destroy this planet killer before it becomes operational. The Hegemony Central Command is heavily defended, Officer Han pointed out. Even with our modified array, we're still just one ship. One ship is all we need, Park replied, especially when they don't know what we're capable of. She returned to her command chair and opened a ship-wide channel. All personnel, this is Captain Park. We have obtained critical intelligence about a hegemony superweapon designed to eliminate our remaining colonies. Our mission parameters have changed. We are no longer simply striking back. We are fighting for the survival of our species. Throughout the ship, crew members listened with grim determination. Many had lost family on Earth or the outer colonies. All had sworn to protect what remained of humanity. Engineer Jun reports that our primary weapon system can be enhanced beyond its current specifications, Park continued. We will need these improvements for what comes next. Our course is set for the Hegemony Central Command. It will be a difficult journey through hostile territory, but the Defiance was built for exactly this purpose. After closing the channel, Park ordered maximum speed toward their new destination. The massive engines of the battleship hummed to life, pushing them toward the heart of enemy space. In the weapons control room, Officer Han worked with Engineer Jun to implement the array modifications. The technology behind a quantum cascade was still not fully understood, even by those who had helped build it. The theory suggests we're not actually destroying matter, Jun explained as they recalibrated the targeting systems. We're creating a localized disruption in space-time that causes matter to phase shift between dimensions. Han looked up from his console. Is that why there's no debris? The ships are just somewhere else. Jun shrugged. Maybe. Or maybe they're simply scattered at the quantum level. The scientists who developed this technology didn't live long enough to fully explain it. Their work continued through the night cycle as the Defiance moved deeper into hegemony space. The modified array was tested at minimum power, creating tiny ripples in space-time that dissipated harmlessly against the ship's reinforced hull. Back on the bridge, Captain Park studied the tactical maps of their route. The journey would take them through 3 heavily patrolled sectors before reaching the central command. Stealth would be impossible for a ship the size of the Defiance. "We'll need to fight our way through," she told her officers during the strategy briefing. "But we must conserve the array's power for our final assault." Science Officer Song suggested using the conventional weapons systems for the initial encounters. "The array should be our last resort, our secret advantage." Park agreed. The element of surprise remained their most valuable asset. As the Defiance approached the first hegemony patrol zone, Captain Park returned to her quarters briefly. From a small locked compartment, she removed a circular metal object, a medallion bearing the Earth Defense Force insignia. It had been given to her by Admiral Yu just before the final battle for Earth. "Remember what we're fighting for," the Admiral had told her. "Not revenge. Survival." Park tucked the medallion into her uniform pocket and returned to the bridge, ready to lead humanity's last battleship into the heart of enemy territory, carrying a weapon that defied the laws of physics, a weapon that should not exist, but represented humanity's final hope. The Defiance moved silently through hegemony space, its transponder broadcasting captured identification codes. Lieutenant Kim maintained a perpetual scan for patrol vessels, while Engineer Choi worked tirelessly to improve their already formidable weapons system. "Another enhancement complete," Choi reported, wiping sweat from his brow. "I've increased efficiency by 12% without additional power requirements." Captain Park nodded appreciatively. "Well done. Every advantage counts now." During their journey, they received a transmission from an unexpected source, a resistance cell from the Ardani, one of the first species subjugated by the hegemony centuries ago. "Your vessel has given hope to those who had none," their leader explained during a secure communication. "We can provide current security protocols for the central system." The alliance proved valuable, but danger emerged from within when Officer Yoon attempted to transmit their position to hegemony forces. Security Chief Min intercepted the transmission just in time. "Why?" Park asked the traitor, her voice heavy with disappointment rather than anger. "Because one ship cannot change the course of history," Yoon replied. "I wanted to spare the crew a hopeless death." Park's response was measured. "Hope is precisely what makes us human, Yoon. It's why they fear us so much." The brig of the Defiance was a small section with only 4 cells. It had never been used until now. Officer Yoon sat on the narrow bed, staring at the floor as Captain Park stood outside the energy barrier. "I didn't want to believe it when Min showed me the transmission log," Park said. "You've been with us since the beginning." Yoon looked up, his eyes tired. "I watched Earth burn, Captain. I saw what they did to our colonies. How can one ship stand against that kind of power?" "The same way humanity has always faced impossible odds," Park replied, "with courage and ingenuity." Security Chief Min arrived with a datapad. "We've finished checking the ship's systems. No other security breaches were detected." Park nodded. "Good. Keep Officer Yoon confined but treated fairly. He's still one of us, even if he lost his way." As Park and Min walked through the corridor, the ship's alarm suddenly blared. "Captain, to the bridge," came Lieutenant Kim's voice over the comm. When they arrived, the tactical display showed 3 hegemony patrol ships approaching. "They're hailing us," Officer Lee reported. "Standard identification request." Park took her seat. "Send the codes we captured." Tense seconds passed as the patrol ships processed the identification signal. "They're not accepting it," Lee said. "They're requesting visual confirmation." Park frowned. "They must have updated their security protocols. Can we avoid them?" Lieutenant Kim shook his head. "Not without revealing ourselves. They're already on an intercept course." "Weapons ready?" Park asked. Officer Han nodded. Conventional systems only, as ordered. The array remains powered down. Park considered their options. Using the quantum cascade array would defeat the patrol ships easily, but would alert the hegemony to their location and capabilities. Prepare for emergency jump, she ordered. Calculate a short hyperspace hop, just enough to lose them. Before they could act, Communications Officer Lee straightened in his chair. Captain, I'm receiving a new transmission. It's not from the patrol ships. Source, Park demanded. Unknown, but the encryption pattern matches the one used by the Ardani resistance. Park nodded. Put it through. The message was brief and text only. Patrol override code. Sequence 7 Tau 9 Epsilon. Use immediately. It's a command override, Science Officer Song explained. But using it could be risky, if it's outdated or fake. Send it, Park decided. The Ardani have no reason to betray us. Officer Lee transmitted the code. The patrol ships immediately changed course, moving away from the Defiance. It worked, Lieutenant Kim said, sounding surprised. They're returning to their regular patrol route. Park smiled slightly. It seems our new allies are watching over us. Later that day, the Defiance received a proper communication from the Ardani resistance. Their leader appeared on screen, a tall, slender being with pale blue skin and large, expressive eyes. I am Daru, coordinator of the Free Ardani Network. He introduced himself. Your ship has become quite famous in hegemony space, Captain Park. Famous isn't what we were aiming for, Park replied. Daru made a gesture that might have been a smile. When you destroyed those scout ships, news spread quickly. Many subjugated species have begun to question hegemony power. Some have even started small rebellions. We're heading for the Central Command, Park told him. We have information about a weapon they're developing. The Planet Killer, Daru nodded. We know of it. That's why we contacted you. We want to help. The Ardani provided detailed information about hegemony patrol schedules, communication frequencies, and security protocols. Most importantly, they shared the location of a secret hyperspace route that would take the Defiance directly to the edge of the central system. This route was used by our ancestors before the hegemony conquered us, Daru explained. They don't know it exists. Engineer Choi studied the navigational data with excitement. This could cut our journey time in half, Captain, and we'd avoid at least 3 major defense perimeters. For the first time since their mission began, a real sense of hope spread through the Defiance. With the Ardani's help, they might actually succeed. As they prepared to enter the secret hyperspace route, Captain Park visited the observation deck. The vast emptiness of space stretched out before her, punctuated by distant stars and the occasional nebula. Somewhere out there were the remaining human colonies, clinging to survival. Science Officer Song joined her. The crew's morale has improved significantly since the Ardani contact. Park nodded. Hope is contagious. Like what you told Officer Yoon, Song remarked, about hope being what makes us human. It's true, Park said. Throughout our history, it's been our defining characteristic. We hope, we dream, we imagine better futures, and then we make them real. The ship entered the hidden hyperspace route the next day. The journey was smooth at first, the ancient path taking them safely through hegemony territory. But on the third day, alarms sounded throughout the ship. Hyperspace disturbance ahead, Lieutenant Kim reported. Something's blocking our path. On the view screen, a massive structure appeared. A hegemony checkpoint that hadn't been in the Ardani data. It's new, Engineer Choi realized. They must have built it after the Ardani were last able to use this route. Captain Park faced another difficult decision. Going around would take too long and expose them to regular patrols. Fighting would reveal their presence. Can we disguise ourselves as a hegemony vessel? She asked. Communications Officer Lee shook his head, not convincingly enough for a checkpoint inspection. Security Chief Min, who had been quietly monitoring the situation, suddenly spoke up. Captain, I have an idea, but it involves Officer Yoon. Park listened as Min outlined his plan. It was risky but might work. An hour later, a small shuttle launched from the Defiance, heading toward the checkpoint. Inside were Security Chief Min and Officer Yoon, the latter now serving a purpose no one had anticipated. Remember, Min told Yoon, this is your chance to save the crew you wanted to protect. Yoon nodded, his face determined. I'll do my part. As they approached the checkpoint, Yoon opened a channel. Hegemony Control. This is Intelligence Officer Doric. Authorization code Theta 117. I have vital information about human resistance movements. The checkpoint controllers were suspicious but intrigued. They allowed the shuttle to dock. Meanwhile, the Defiance waited at a safe distance, engines ready. Captain Park watched the checkpoint through long-range sensors, hoping her gamble would pay off. 2 hours later, the checkpoint's primary systems suddenly went offline. The massive structure drifted, powerless, as the small shuttle raced back toward the Defiance. When Min and Yoon returned, they were greeted as heroes. Yoon had used his knowledge of hegemony protocols to convince the checkpoint controllers of his story, giving Min time to plant disabling devices throughout the station. I was wrong, Captain, Yoon admitted later. One ship can change history, especially this ship. The Defiance continued its journey toward the heart of hegemony power, carrying the hopes of humanity, and now many other species as well. The Defiance emerged from hyperspace at the outer edge of the hegemony central system. The sight that greeted them was both beautiful and terrifying. 7 stars had been artificially arranged in perfect geometric alignment, with the massive governing station positioned at the precise gravitational center. This astronomical wonder was the greatest achievement of hegemony engineering, and their seat of power. The hegemony central system was a marvel of alien engineering. 7 stars artificially arranged in perfect geometric alignment, with the governing station positioned at the precise gravitational center. Surrounding this astronomical wonder was the largest collection of warships ever assembled. I count over 3,000 vessels, Kim reported, his voice barely a whisper. Captain Park studied the formation. They're arranged in a defensive sphere. Standard hegemony doctrine. But it creates a vulnerability if we approach from vector 118. The Defiance accelerated to attack speed, and the quantum cascade array hummed to life. What followed was not merely a battle but a demonstration of human innovation against overwhelming odds. The human battleship moved with impossible agility, striking with surgical precision. Each activation of the array eliminated multiple enemy vessels caught in the same spatial distortion. Broadcasting on all frequencies, Park announced as the Defiance cut through the enemy formation. This is Captain Ju-1 Park of Earth. We do not fight for vengeance, but for the right of all species to exist freely. Your hegemony's days of tyranny are over. As the battle reached its climax, the Defiance, now severely damaged, found itself facing the enormous hegemony flagship. One final charge, Park ordered. Everything we have left. The bridge crew took deep breaths, preparing themselves for what might be their final action. The Defiance had done the impossible, penetrated the heart of the hegemony, and destroyed hundreds of their ships, but the cost had been high. Life support was failing on decks 4 through 7. The main engines were operating at only 30% capacity. Fire suppression systems worked overtime throughout the ship. Quantum cascade array at 94% charge, Officer Hand reported, his console sparking from damage. But the targeting system is damaged. I can't guarantee precision. Captain Park's uniform was torn and stained with blood, not all of it her own. She had personally helped rescue crew members from a collapsed section after a direct hit. We don't need precision now, she said grimly. We just need power. The hegemony flagship loomed ahead, a colossal vessel 5 times the size of the Defiance. Its hull was black and smooth, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. According to the Ardani intelligence, it housed the Hegemony Council itself, the 7 rulers who had ordered Earth's destruction. They're hailing us, Communications Officer Lee announced, surprise evident in his voice. Park nodded. Let's hear what they have to say. The main screen activated, showing a chamber with 7 thrones. Each was occupied by a representative of the hegemony's ruling species. Their leader, a tall being with metallic skin, leaned forward. "Human vessel, you have fought with unexpected skill," the alien said, its voice translated by the ship's computer. "But this pointless resistance ends now. Your ship is damaged beyond repair. Surrender, and we may yet show mercy." Captain Park stood up straight despite her injuries. "Your definition of mercy was demonstrated at Earth. We're not interested." The alien ruler's expression shifted slightly. "You misunderstand our actions. Humanity was deemed too dangerous to exist within galactic society. Your species evolves too quickly, adapts too readily. In time, you would have threatened us all. So you committed genocide rather than learn to coexist," Park replied coldly. Around her, the bridge crew continued preparations for their final attack. Lieutenant Kim calculated the optimal approach vector. Engineer Choi diverted all remaining power to the array and engines. Medical Officer Shin administered stimulants to keep the injured crew functioning. "We did what was necessary for stability," the hegemony leader insisted, "just as we did with the Ardani and dozens of other potentially disruptive species." Park's eyes narrowed. "And the planet killer? Is that also necessary for stability?" The alien showed no surprise that they knew about the superweapon. "It is more efficient than conventional methods. A humane solution to the problem of dangerous species." Captain Park ended the transmission with a gesture. "All hands, prepare for final approach. This is what we came for." The Defiant surged forward, its damaged engines straining. The hegemony flagship launched a wave of smaller attack craft to intercept them. "Evasive pattern Delta," Park ordered. The human battleship twisted and turned, avoiding the worst of the enemy fire. But they couldn't evade everything. Impact after impact shook the vessel as hegemony weapons found their mark. "Hull breach on Deck 3. Someone shouted. "Sealing emergency bulkheads," replied another voice. Through it all, Captain Park remained standing, directing their desperate charge toward the enemy flagship. When a nearby explosion knocked everyone else off their feet, she gripped her command chair and stayed upright. "Distance to target," she demanded. 8,000 kilometers in closing," Kim answered, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. "Array status. Fully charged," Han confirmed. "But we'll only get one shot." Park nodded. "That's all we need." The Defiance continued its approach, trailing debris and venting atmosphere from multiple breaches. The enemy fire intensified as they drew closer to the flagship. Systems failed across the ship, but the crew kept fighting. 5,000 kilometers, Kim announced. "Prepare to fire on my mark," Park ordered. Suddenly, Science Officer Song called out from his damaged station. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple hyperspace signatures, more hegemony reinforcements." Park's expression didn't change. "Stay on course." 3,000 kilometers. The first of the reinforcement vessels emerged from hyperspace, but they weren't hegemony designs. They were smaller, faster ships of various configurations. "Captain," Lee called out in astonishment. "They're hailing us. It's the Ardani." And others. On the screen appeared Daru, the Ardani resistance leader. Behind him stood representatives of other species, all former victims of hegemony oppression. "Captain Park," Daru said, "your message reached more ears than you know. We come to fight alongside you." The Allied ships, over 100 of them, immediately engaged the hegemony vessels, drawing fire away from the Defiance. It was a suicide mission for many of them, their small craft no match for hegemony warships, but they fought with desperate courage. 1,000 kilometers, Kim reported. "Array targeting the flagship's central section," Han confirmed. Captain Park opened a channel to all Allied vessels. "This is Captain Park. Clear a path to the flagship. What we're about to do will affect a large area." The Allied ships responded immediately, pulling away from the vicinity of the hegemony flagship. 500 kilometers. "Fire," Park ordered quietly. The quantum cascade array discharged at full power for the first time in its existence. The ship shuddered as reality itself seemed to bend between the Defiance and the Hegemony flagship. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, starting at the center of the massive enemy vessel, matter began to distort. The distortion spread outward, consuming the flagship from within. The enormous ship didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist, section by section, as the space-time rupture expanded. When it was over, nothing remained of the flagship but a faint ripple in the fabric of space. The battle around them froze as every surviving vessel witnessed the impossible. Then, one by one, the remaining Hegemony ships began to retreat. On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Park finally allowed herself to sink into her command chair. "Send a message to all Hegemony vessels," she ordered weakly. "The war is over. The Council is gone. Any ship that continues to fight will share their fate." As the battered human battleship drifted among the stars, surrounded by the allies they had inspired, Captain Park looked at her exhausted crew and spoke the words they had fought so hard to earn. "We won." In the vast darkness of space, the Defiance, a human spaceship, made its final and decisive move against the alien Hegemony. The enemy flagship hung motionless, its critical systems exposed after a powerful attack from the quantum cascade array. On the bridge, Officer Lee reported an incoming communication from the Hegemony Council. 7 alien rulers appeared on the screen, their faces showing clear signs of defeat and fear. The lead counselor spoke directly to Captain Park, asking what terms she would demand. Standing tall despite her wounds, Park made her conditions clear: human sovereignty, freedom for all enslaved species, and a new council where every race would have an equal voice. The negotiations were long and complex. For days, representatives from different worlds discussed, argued, and finally reached an agreement. The Hegemony, understanding the power of the quantum cascade technology, had no real choice but to accept the human demands. As the Defiance orbited the central space station, now filled with representatives from dozens of liberated worlds, Captain Park sat alone in her quarters. She studied star charts, looking for potential locations for a new human colony. Her mind was filled with hope and possibilities. Officer Song entered the room and shared some news. People were already calling the new agreement the Park Doctrine, a framework of mutual respect and cooperation instead of conquest and domination. He praised her leadership, but Park saw it differently. She believed this was not her personal achievement, but a testament to humanity's potential. The Defiance, which had once been the last desperate hope of a nearly extinct species, had transformed into something much more. It was now a symbol of resistance, a beacon of hope for an entire galaxy. Humanity had shown that strength comes not from violence, but from understanding and cooperation. As the station hummed with the sounds of different species working together, Park looked out at the stars. The universe seemed bigger and more promising than ever before. What had started as a fight for survival had become a revolution of ideas, a new path for intelligent life among the stars. The war was over. A new chapter was beginning.